People's Republic of China celebrates its birthday with a show of military strength, and Hong Kong celebrates in its own way. The Chinese Communist Party faces unprecedented challenges: the US-China trade war, an economic slowdown, and growing international criticism for its human rights atrocities.
But who cares about that? Today's a party, a communist party.
October 1st is China's National Day, and this year, the People's Republic of China is celebrating its 70th birthday. That's right, China's communist government is almost as old as your grandmother. In mainland China, celebrations included floats featuring China's happy ethnic minorities, especially the Uyghurs. And whatever this is. Oh, don't forget the giant missiles. They're clearly compensating for their lack of human rights. Plus, lots of goose-stepping soldiers. And proof that China is a leader in robotics. Yeah, that shot was creepy 4 years ago, too. And there was even a portrait of Xi Jinping waving at Xi Jinping. And here comes former leader Jiang Zemin, who is possibly alive. And oh hey, it's Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam. Clearly nothing is happening right now in Hong Kong that would require her attention.
That's right. The Chinese Communist Party wants the world to know everything's fine, especially here in Hong Kong, where the people love the Communist Party. I don't care what you've heard.
Everywhere you look, there are signs celebrating the 70th anniversary of the party, mostly around all the closed shops and empty streets and barricaded subway stations. Why, it almost feels like martial law. They're just not calling it that. At this point, even being outside is a form of protest. But Hong Kong police have warned about possible terrorism today. Police said in a recent press conference that some demonstrators were planning to kill officers, set fires, and bomb shopping malls. The police's claim was partly based on social media groups with very few followers that have sent almost no messages and were registered in Mandarin instead of Cantonese. This sounds like a job for China's People's Armed Police. Good thing they've been secretly moved into Hong Kong.
Between practically shutting down the city and warning about terrorism, it seems the message the Hong Kong government has to people is to stay home and cower in fear. Which, when you think about it, is a pretty appropriate way to celebrate 70 years of communist rule.
Please keep away from the police personnel.
But even though the police are trying to keep people off the streets, that didn't stop Hong Kongers from coming out and showing how they truly feel about communism. They feel not good. Protesters are crashing the party, literally.
The Hong Kong police have made it pretty clear they don't want people coming out today. Why did you come out?
The more they don't want us to come out, actually that makes us even more of us will be coming out. This is what their tactics. They're trying to scare us with violence.
Are you worried about what might happen today?
Of course, that's why I'm covering up myself. But there must be consequences for everything that we have to do. But then I feel like I still want to fight for what I stand for, and I'm willing to take up the consequences.
Our government has not been respecting for us for so long, since June. And they haven't heard any of our demands, any of what we want. And they have keep on denying any of our human rights. I think this is very important for us to show that we are not afraid of what they do.
We are concerned whether there will be more police violence and there will be more people injured. But I think the people of Hong Kong are ready to fight.
Do you have a birthday message you'd like to send to the CCP?
If you want me asking my feelings, I would just screw you, Chinese government. That's it.
More than 100,000 people protested throughout Hong Kong, the majority here on Hong Kong Island, even though it was illegal. And after crowds of citizens marched with defiant hope, riot police showed up to ruin everything. But the celebration wasn't over yet. It just turned into the after party.
It's a dance party out here! Woo!
Yes, there are some cool new moves on the street. Check out the policeman shuffle, the umbrella hop, and the Please stop tear gassing us. We're reporters and we're the only people up here. Boogie.
I bet someone in Beijing is looking at these celebrations right now and thinking, boy, Hong Kongers love the Communist Party so much, we should just get rid of the one country, two systems policy.
As the heart of Hong Kong descends into an apocalyptic hellscape, it almost seems like the Communist Party's authoritarian rule isn't much to celebrate. And then elsewhere in Hong Kong, a police officer shot a teenager point blank in the chest. I think the party's over. So that was Hong Kong during the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China. It makes you wonder if there will be a 71st. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Joining me today is Edward Chin, a Hong Kong activist, hedge fund manager, and founder of 2047 Hong Kong Monitor. Thanks for joining me, Ed.
Chris, it's good to see you in less than 100 days, I think.
Less than 100 days or about. Well, so these protests have been going on for a long time now, over 100 days. How has that affected the economy of Hong Kong?
Some of the retail businesses definitely have suffered, but a lot of people are sympathetic about the current situation because almost it's like the last fight for Hong Kong's core values: freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom to move around Hong Kong even. Seems like Hong Kong is turning into more like a semi-police state. It's something I don't want to see as a business person.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen police and protesters clashing in malls. That's definitely not good for businesses.
No, it's not. And I have seen students, very young people, very young age, 12, 13 years old even, and very senior people, senior in terms of age. They come out in unison to defend what they think.
And it's not just young people protesting. There's been lawyer protests, doctor protests. This is really an all level of society.
I'm touched, honestly, like the medical profession, they do come out, not just the paramedics. I've seen like one fifth-year medical school student, like name remain anonymous. He would put on full gear. At first he was just a paramedic, but when police, which is driven by money because of the overpay, you were paid like 1.5, 2 times pay as a policeman to control the situation, so to speak, right? When you fire so many tear gas canisters towards demonstrators, the young doctors-to-be, they would gear up now. I've seen them, like dress as more like the Batmans, the Avengers, so to speak, right, to defend. This is almost like the last fight they believe in because they were born like in the 90s or they are millennials. So they really believe that this is their Hong Kong, they call it home. They might not have a memory of the colonial days like us because we benefited from the economic uprising from 30 years ago. They don't see that same type of a scenario, but that they could only see like Hong Kong as a more polarization. So that's why they came out. And even the older generation, they come out and support.
So how are businesses reacting?
Now, definitely it's extremes. You could see, like the big real estate developers who are, some of them are members of the National People Congress or Political Consultative Conference.
Which is a mainland Chinese organization.
Yeah, right. So they have to kowtow. The big developers have to counter and say, condemn everyone. They would say, put up newspaper ads and condemn the demonstrators from, causing so-called trouble.
And part of the reason housing prices are so high is because of an influx of rich mainland Chinese people, correct?
The housing prices have been up a lot, over the last few decades. But even with the protests going on in the last 100 days or so, people are concerned, but it's not like dropping like a rock. There's still a lot of China money supporting the real estate. But then the Hong Kong tycoons, they are also afraid that they will be replaced by the mainland princelings. So they're extracting, even the last penny from the normal Hong Kong people. That's something we won't want to see. So as in unity for the first time, the young professionals, those people who are retiring, the so-called upper middle class too, are joining this so-called movement. It's beyond the extradition deal now. It's fighting. It's like the last fight for Hong Kong. Hong Kong people, most of them, I would say 99.999% are not asking for Hong Kong's independence. They are fighting for at least the Deng Xiaoping model, which is the two systems has to remain intact. We don't have that now.
The Hong Kong government has said the protests are about economic inequality or livelihood issues. Do you think that's true?
I think that's part of the problem, definitely. Because 20 years ago, you could see like a young accountant who is making 10,000 Hong Kong per month. 20 years later, is still making 10,000 Hong Kong per month. I would think if we want some more radical changes, like the Hong Kong government should, like the Singapore model, build something like for young family, at least have 400 to 500 square feet of living space. I mean, you cannot have like 150 square feet net, having like a 4-person household living, in that so-called like a truncated home, right? It's inhumane, honestly. You're talking about Hong Kong is so rich, it's also so polarized. And also, for instance, the minimum monthly salary for university graduates, it cannot be like 10,000 forever over the last 25 years. It has to be some minimum standard, just like a minimum wage. Let's say 20,000, 21, 22,000 honky. Make the society more fair. So far, a lot of people, when they come out, it's also, they don't see a future.
The Civil Human Rights Front, one of the major organizers of the protests, has accused Beijing of economic imperialism. Has becoming part of China helped the Hong Kong economy?
Now, last time, Chris, when you were in Hong Kong, we already talked about liquid assets moving overseas to Singapore, Jersey, Channel Island. I have not seen this trend from stopping, to be honest.
So money is still going out of Hong Kong?
Of course, like people won't, think twice about, like the so-called, right now it's jurisdiction risk. People have to think about it. Now, with the Human Rights and Democracy Act, that could be a reality in the U.S. They could penalize, Hong Kong or Beijing government people from entering the U.S. or freezing their assets. Would they have some retaliation to the pro-democracy people too? And also those 2 million people who come out to the streets who are fighting for their own freedoms? I don't know. So that's something called like a backup plan, or people have to think about logically if Hong Kong is under duress. So first of all, Beijing could retaliate by freezing some of the activists' assets too. So liquid assets is very important. So I think anyone with 1 million Hong Kong, which is like 150,000 US, they could think, hey, if I open a premier account in one of the global banks, they want to offshore maybe 60% of the assets overseas.
Wow.
Like a 6-4 allocation. Not in remembrance of the Tiananmen 6-4, but the 6-4 allocation could be wise. Because money movement, you can do it quite easily.
Now, I know a lot of Hong Kong companies like Cathay Pacific have come under pressure from the Chinese Communist Party to come out against the protesters. Do you think more Hong Kong companies will face that kind of pressure?
Even like BNP Paribas, which is a French bank, which is quite controversial. I think one of the activist lawyer, Jason Ng, resigned abruptly just, I think, 2 weeks ago because of his comments on his Facebook. Now, a lot of Hong Kong people are singing a song called May Glory Be to Hong Kong. I don't know whether you listen to it on YouTube.
We've heard it there.
Yeah, and then there were some mainland tourists/protesters were raiding IFC, which is a high-end shopping mall at the financial center, right? Like your Twin Towers equivalent. And then Jason was commenting something about the mainland protesters. And then someone saw that and then has it circulated in Weibo, and then he went into some trouble, and then he resigned, or he is no longer with BNP. It's unprecedented. This is what I call white terror. White, not the word Caucasian white, but terror in general. We like to use that term, white terror. Has nothing to do with the race.
Okay. Well, how would you define white terror?
It's horror show. I mean, it's like intimidation. It's like what happened to me 10 months ago, right? January 1st, when I write like a protest sign saying, President Xi Jinping, please release the 2 Canadians. The whole world is watching. So even before I come out, they visited my office and say, I detained an interviewee in my office. And no one comes in for an interview, right, on January 1st. So a lot of these weird things do happen because the phones, I think a lot of us, our phones are tapped. So Hong Kong is becoming more and more like a Xinjiang situation with a lot of AI lamps monitoring, facial recognition, credit rating system in 2020. So a lot of things are slowly integrated into the Chinese way. That makes me worry because I don't see the 2 systems as too valid now. That's why people still have to come out and fight and to speak up.
Well, are white-collar professionals or any companies doing anything to support the protesters?
As individuals, a lot of them, they do come out, but not at a corporate level. You will be penalized, like Cathay was penalized. I think HSBC, they replaced some of the senior executives, right? And then I mentioned the BNP case, and then probably they will come out as individuals and support, sometimes anonymous, sometimes they have to, if they go out, they have to put on a mask. Unfortunately, this is Hong Kong now.
2 credit rating agencies, Moody's and Fitch, have changed the outlook of Hong Kong to negative recently. Why is that?
Because they think the protest could be prolonged, and also the retail definitely has suffered. Now, I have a friend who is at first more like Blue Ribbon, which is more like pro-Beijing. Okay. But now it's more sympathetic towards the protesters because his son is around that age too. So he has a retail chain with 15 stores. I won't mention what type of clothing because otherwise you would know who he is. So of course the sales got affected. The sales dropped 30-40%. But at first, 5 years ago, he blamed the umbrella movement that Professor Benny Tai initiated. And the finance and banking group that support Occupy Central also support Benny Tai's movement. He was fiercely against it, but now he becomes more sympathetic because he knows that his son is around that age too. He doesn't see his son's upward mobility as a Hong Konger. So even his sales suffer. He negotiated with the landlord, which is really in control of Hong Kong's economy.
So do you think if 1 country, 2 systems begins to become eroded or disappears, that will be good or bad for the economy of Hong Kong?
Honestly, the 2 systems doesn't exist anymore. Now, take a look at Macau right now. You have Article 23. You could not have a protest. People are very calm and so-called orderly, right? You only got 1 voice. But Hong Kong is quite multicultural before. And Hong Kong has been an international city, but this will become an international city with a lot of constraints. Now, we don't have a curfew yet, right? The government hinted that if things got so-called out of control, we could have curfews. They would put up, but we have a mini curfew going on right now. And then the police can do searches on people anytime, and then they talk about this retractable baton could be carried around. You know, there's a lot of debate on this so-called policemen making excessive money, as I alluded to earlier. They could immigrate to Taiwan because the Taiwan immigration investment scheme is only 6 million NT dollars, right? So with 1.5 years of work with a lot of overtime pay, they could immigrate to another country by bashing up people, which is sad. I mean, of course I say it half jokingly now, but actually it's a very bad thing for Hong Kong people fighting Hong Kong people. But this is how the CCP wants to play it.
So the U.S. has the Hong Kong Policy Act of 1992, which basically, as far as trade relations go, treats Hong Kong as something different and separate from mainland China. Now Congress is talking about passing the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act,
right,
which would have the U.S. government review whether or not there's reason to maintain that difference. What would happen to the Hong Kong economy if the U.S. treats Hong Kong the same as mainland China?
That effect remains to be seen, but talk about the Human Rights and Democracy Act first. I think it's a good deterrent, to be honest, because people like Carrie Lam, you know, her husband has got a UK passport, same as her son, but some of the tycoons who are so pro-Beijing, right? The wife is still like an American, and then the kids all have a U.S. bank account or companies in the U.S. They have to think twice when you try to so-called stabilize things in Hong Kong. They have to think about the consequences when you try to, you know, like create so much social unrest. I don't see if, honestly, when you have a rally, when you don't have police, everything is so orderly. Suddenly, when you have like 5,000 policemen came out, like a riot police, and then these speedy dragons, and then fiercely firing the tear gas and then rubber bullets, suddenly, you know, the Hong Kong society goes crazy. Now, go back to the Human Rights and Democracy Act. I think if the Congress passes it, I think it would be a good deterrent for the Hong Kong government to think twice about the evil deeds they try to implement. They have to think very carefully. So, I mean, I don't know too well about the politicians in the U.S., but I think Marco Rubio and Nancy Pelosi, they're doing a great job by helping Hong Kong. I don't want to talk about Trump. It's a different story. People have a love and hate on President Trump, but definitely your congressman has been helping Hong Kong. I think, thank you for that.
Yeah. It's become a bipartisan issue, which is a miracle in this day and age in the U.S.
It is a miracle to see the U.S. get so united on Hong Kong's issues.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Ed.
I hope I don't see you in a not too distant future.
Yeah, under better circumstances,
yes, of course.
Hope.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.